Flying through the sky with lances held high, the Pegasus Knights of Bretonnia offer unparalleled hit-and-run ability for the cost. With the recent changes to mass and bracing, they can now swoop in above defending units and offer a hit into the backline. Only 1,100 points. The regular old Pegasus Knights are here. With some of the recent changes to Yeoman, I wanted to try something a little bit different. So I'm going to go over this build. It's definitely not something I would necessarily recommend in practice, but it's pretty fun. Got 4 mounted Yeomen, 4 Yeoman Archers, including the ROR, Prophetess of Heavens, 2 Paladins, 2 Pegasus Knights, men-at-arms with polearms, some shields, shielded spears, a single Ox Arrow, a single Battle Pilgrim. We're up against Lokir Fellheart, who made the mistake of coming in the air against Bretonnia, so now he gets to feel the wrath of said Pegasus Knights, although I don't want to take an engagement on the ground near these Dark Riders. We've got repeater crossbows as well, Cold One Dread Knights, plus the RORs, who recently had some buffs of their own, as did the Fear Spears, 1 unit of Blackguard, Sorceress of Dark Magic for those Soul Stealers. And yeah, the Pegasus Knights are going to be used for they're going to be showcasing, rather, one of their strengths here, which is the ability to take air superiority pretty cost effectively. Their anti-large and charge bonus means they're going to come in here, do some nice damage. A little bit hard to see with the trees, so we'll get those out of the way momentarily. As Lokir fights this massive Pegasus Knights, just gets him in a nice surround. The buffs from Lore of Heavens as well. You can see here we've used Curse the Midnight Wind, debuffing armor. He's popped Dreaded Duelist, Deadly Onslaught. Also a Soul Stealer coming in here. One of my Paladins took a lot of damage there, but Harmonic Convergence on the other one. Again, going to juice up his stats. So the Pegasus Knights already, combined with the Paladins, able to finish off Lokir very early in the battle, which is going to be a huge advantage to me, but Stark Elf Army still has plenty of potency. This Sorceress of Dark Magic already gotten some pretty good damage, and I have no source of healing, so I've got to be a little bit careful. Don't actually have great tools for killing the Dread Knights besides these Spears and Halberds. Speaking of which, we're going to get a little bit of an engagement here. The Yeoman kind of screening a little bit. Trying to keep my Yeoman Archers at the very least online as long as possible. These other Yeomen are going to be used more or less as blocking detachments, and here they do somewhat block those Dread Knights, although I'm going to dispatch them over to the far side where the other Dread Knights are coming in, getting on my single unit of Pox Arrows. Managed to sweep up and around with these Battle Pilgrims and get kind of in that back line there. They're trading okay now against those Blackguards. Pegasus Knights, though, getting back to them, are also very fast. 105 speed means they can catch these Skirmish Cav here, and you can see they're going to be getting these little lance hits against those Dark Riders, felling a model here and there. The Dark Riders, the Blackguards try and come in and screen. You can see a Soul Stealer also does catch 1 unit there, does not catch the second unit, thankfully. Does get both of the Paladins as well, though. But because of that kind of going back up in the air, coming back down, they're able to get a hold of quite a few of these Dark Riders, just providing absolute dividends for the time being. That being said, again, Dread Knights could potentially be a problem here. The Halberds are trading nice and cost effectively, and I just got my massive Yeoman in here, just completely outnumbering these Dread Knights, the Regiment of Renown Dread Knights even. We are going to sunder their armor, debuff their stats once more, down to 26 melee attack. We also juice up with the Harmonic Convergence on one of these Yeomen. They're up to 48 attack, 50 defense, trading actually really cost effectively against those Knights there. But just about missed that Assault of Stone, but you guys probably heard it. Saw some of the rocks drop there on those Blackguards. The Prophetess unchallenged in the air at this point. Unfortunately, one of my Pegasus Knights did get rounded off by the support of those spears, the repeater crossbows as well, but this other unit of Pegasus Knights now finished 1 repeater crossbow. A few more Dark Riders that could ride in and try and save. Pegasus Knights only have 80 armor, which is not a lot for quote-unquote heavy cavalry, right? They are flying heavy cavalry, though, so their speed should be their armor, and as long as you keep clean lanes to engage and disengage, generally are pretty usable from what I've found, especially against cavalry and kind of mobile situations. Once again, breaking off those repeater crossbows. Things are looking alright. I'm still a little bit worried about how I'm going to kill these Dread Knights. And the Sorceress also is just kiting around the Paladins at this point, cackling at them as they try and grab her. Prophetess looks on wisely, I'm sure contemplating that awesome headdress of hers. Full-on Princess Leia status over here. Dread Knights, though, being pulled into this mass of bow yeomen. Wardens of Montfort, of course, with their poison, are providing a little bit of benefit in debuffing the heavy weapon damage of those Knights of the Ebon Claw, if they can make contact, that is. Meanwhile, Pilgrims and Halberds holding out valiantly, beating down those Blackguard of Nagaron just through sheer weight of numbers. And yeah, things are looking pretty good. Pegasus Knights are over here continuing to chase off. We've shattered some Dark Riders there. We've got a few more to try and take down right here. This unit did come back from route, and yeah, just about got an XP Chevron there. This one, almost a second XP Chevron, so definitely some great damage value being done. We'll take a look at that after the battle, of course. Just about out of ammo on these Yeomen, though, which means I'm going to have to start using them in melee, and Yeomen Archers, definitely pretty garbage stats in terms of attack and defense. Even the Wardens of Montfort, really only like 22 attack, 24 defense, something like that. Yeah, 24, 22 rather. It can charge and hit and run a little bit. I mean, they do have a 12 charge bonus, so there we go. It's more just about the mass kind of knocking models over, applying different attack debuffs, but we're going to use up the last of the ammunition here, going after those Blackguards. Meanwhile, the Pegasus Knights just kind of hang in for the time being. They're back to the battle, finished off the last of the repeater crossbows, now ready to mop up these Dread Knights in the late game. I'm going to try and fix these Dread Knights if I can with whatever various units, but first, thin out the spears, surround them with Yeomen. I have to say, these bow yeomen have really impressed me. The melee yeomen, they did get a pretty substantial buff in the last patch. I still need to use them a little bit more to see how they are. But the bow yeomen, I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with. They were able to do quite well here. Still struggling to finish off these Fear Spears and Dark Riders, but they're doing their best, you know. Certainly are quite a few of them left. Here we get a nice engagement. Battle Pilgrims able to form a little bit of an anvil, but I don't want to stay and fight too long because I really want these halberds more than anything. This one unit of trusty polearms here. Men-at-arms with polearms, only 450 points now. It's super cost-effective, honestly, at that price. Yeah, the yeomen continuing to do their thing. And the billmen, good old billmen from Med 2. It's interesting to see halberds like actually be good in a Total War game. But yeah, this is basically the ideal situation for me. Fix them on the halberds and then use the Pegasus Knights to hammer in. Get some nice engagements on the side. Ooh, that Pegasus Knight definitely had a rough time. I do have to be careful, cycle charge as much as I can. I don't want to stay in sustained combat against the good stats, the high, you know, attack and defense, relatively speaking, of the Dread Knights. Don't want to fight them in sustained combat. So we're going to pull back up, wheel around for another charge, and get ready to swing in, play off those halberds once more. Yeomen pulling back for one more big charge. And the Prophetess, once more, completely healthy. Nice thing about the Prophetess is she's so cheap, right? And Curse of the Midnight Wind now used here to debuff armor and melee attack once more. Again, Knights of the Ebon Claw down to only 26 melee attacks, so the Yeoman Archers will not be quite so useless against them. Likewise, that armor debuff helps. Even with the Pegasus Knights too, like they have pretty good AP values, but primary non-AP damage, high charge. With that armor just that little bit lower, they'll do more damage consistently. And here we get the final crack, break the back of those Cold One Dread Knights, and there's a victory. Well played. This was Deadly Bunnies here. We've had quite a few good games lately. But yeah, fun stuff. For me, Prophetess did some pretty decent damage value with the drop rocks, and then of course the buffs and debuffs on her are very strong. Lore of Heavens in general, I would say, probably one of the stronger buff, debuff lores. And since it seems like with them kind of changing the way wind spells work successively, like Wind Blast, definitely not as good as it used to be. The buff, debuffs kind of could be more of the meta now. I don't know 100% for sure, but Lore of Heavens you may see a little bit of a comeback. And specifically here, I brought it just in case he did bring an air unit. I wanted to have that lore attribute to be able to debuff the speed and melee defense of a powerful flying unit. And just so happens we'd managed to get Lokir here, which is pretty nice. Two Pegasus Knights definitely paid for themselves between taking out Lokir, taking out these crossbow repeaters, and then finishing off in the late game the Dread Knights, who none of which paid for themselves. Definitely very, very good stuff. Like I said, the Mounted Yeomen actually did pay for themselves. I guess Morton's not quite, but the damage is there for the most part, and you know, chasing routing units off, having that late game kind of presence of the cavalry as well is quite nice. The regular yeomen got absolutely pounded, but I mean, asked them to do a lot, to be fair. They're definitely not meant to fight Dread Knights. That's a pretty big disparity. Bows, all things considered, did their job. Same thing with the Battle Pilgrims. The Halberds, though, man, doubling up on damage value on the one there. 900 points, 783 for this guy. Love these guys at this price. Spears kind of did their job as well. Yeah, fun stuff. Paladins getting in on the action. Also, just barely paying for themselves. Maybe not actually, but for Deadly Bunnies here, definitely the Dark Sorceress is the bright spot and kind of shows the power of that. Soul Stealer, even on a lower tier caster, still quite strong in this matchup against these higher value targets, and that is a weakness of Pegasus Knights because they're relatively low HP, low model count. Things like Soul Stealer, Tempest, even like Spirit Leech, they do quite a bit of damage to these guys, so you have to be careful of that. Fear Spears largely did okay. Blackguards definitely did not pay for themselves. Dread Knights, pretty impressive kill totals and got pretty dang close to paying for themselves, but not quite. Dark Riders also interesting, just kind of way outnumbered by the Yeomen. Didn't do a whole lot. They did some things, but not a whole lot. But yeah, fun stuff. Pegasus Knights, just to quickly finish up on them. Of course, there is the other variant, the Royal Pegasus Knights, that I'll be talking about another time. I have an older video featuring them, but we'll be making an updated one at some point in the future. Yeah, I don't know, again, this is kind of just me theory crafting a little bit and thinking about different things, but because of the way that the bracing works now for infantry, I've said this in a few other videos, but I think flying units will kind of have an enhanced role in that they can immediately bypass those lines, whereas ground cavalry is, you know, subject to spear boxing and so on. So I do see potentially more use of Pegasus Knights purely because of that. Granted, you do have to be even more careful than ever with your charge lanes. Maybe not more careful than ever. They do operate reasonably decently, but yeah, you have to be aware of your charge lanes, definitely, and try and get clean engagements. But if you do, it doesn't take a lot for these guys to pay for themselves. Yeah, 1,100 points, 55 charge bonus, 56 weapon damage. They have 18 unit models, too. I know recently Vargeist got a little bit of a buff, so it's kind of an interesting comparison now between these two units, because they are relatively close in terms of cost. Vargeist do have less models, but they deal more damage. Lower charge, but again, primary AP. They don't have the anti-large bonus either, which, I remember right, is pretty decent. Plus 12 anti-large, definitely not bad at all. Pegasus Knights, 105 speed. I believe they are faster as well. Heavier armor, better leadership, which is actually not true because these guys are undead, but only 10 armor on Vargeist does make them very squishy. You have a tiny bit more HP, but of course you can heal Pegasus Knights, especially with like a Earthblood on a blob of 2 or 3 is pretty cost effective. And again, only 1,100 points. If you were to compare them to kind of another mid-tier shock cavalry on the ground, obviously the model count doesn't seem great, but they do a decent amount of weapon damage. And of course the ability to fly. Vanguard also quite nice to have. Yeah, that's Pegasus Knights in a nutshell for you. Fast hit and run, up in the sky. Very thematic and appropriate for Bretonnia, and in certain matchups, I do think they're going to be pretty solid, especially if you expect a lot of lighter units. Like, Dark Elves tend to bring a lot of light units with relatively low HP, which is why I would say these kind of lower-cost Pegasus Knights can trade so well. It really doesn't take a lot against that lower Elven HP, whether that be Dark Elves. I could also see potentially Wood Elves and High Elves. High Elves is tricky, though. I mean, I guess Wood Elves now, too, have Lore of High Magic, so be warned of Tempest. But at least with these guys, you're not paying so much into one unit, whereas, like, for example, with the Royal Pegasus Knights, they don't have that much more HP, but you are paying a lot more for them, right? So if you're going to bring some flying units, it's a little bit lower risk to bring these regular Pegasus Knights. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching that one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.